Living just a few steps away from Gene Hackman's mansion, this neighbor has suddenly broken their silence, completely changing their story after weeks of staying quiet. What they saw, what they heard, could entirely alter the way we perceive Gene Hackman's death and may even force authorities to reopen the case. What really happened in Gene Hackman's final days? What did this neighbor witness on that fateful night? And why did it take them so long to find the courage to speak out? A dark truth is beginning to surface. Get ready, because what you're about to hear in today's video will send chills down your spine. 1. The calm before the storm. Gene Hackman's life after retiring was a stark contrast to the years he spent at the pinnacle of Hollywood. Unlike many other stars who try to maintain their fame by attending events, giving interviews, or staying active in the media, Hackman chose an entirely different path. He never appeared on red carpets, never gave interviews, and never participated in any Hollywood projects after his final film. It was as if he had vanished from the industry altogether. Santa Fe, New Mexico, a serene land with vast natural beauty, became his sanctuary, where he sought peace in his final years. Hackman's choice was not an escape but a calculated decision. He had dedicated his entire life to cinema but had never truly felt a sense of belonging to it. To him, fame was fleeting, and at a certain point, one had to live for themselves, not for public approval. This was evident in his daily routine in Santa Fe. He started each morning with a hot cup of coffee, spent time painting, and took leisurely strolls around his estate. It was a simple life, yet it was exactly what he had yearned for after decades of Hollywood's relentless noise. Alongside him was Betsy Arakawa, the woman who had been his partner for over 3 decades. They met in the 1980s when Betsy was a young classical pianist. Though Hackman had previously been married, Betsy was the one who made him feel as if he had finally found his true soulmate. Their life was not like that of other Hollywood couples. They avoided the media frenzy, stayed away from extravagant parties, and never sought to maintain their reputation through sensational headlines. To them, love was not something to be displayed on magazine covers but rather cherished in the quiet moments, sharing breakfast together, walking hand in hand, and simply enjoying life's tranquility. However, despite their secluded lifestyle, strange occurrences began to surface. For years, Hackman maintained a strict daily routine. Every morning, he would drive to a familiar coffee shop for his morning brew and to pick up the newspaper. He was not a man of many words, but the cafe owner remembered him well, a man with sharp eyes, a contemplative demeanor, and a presence that commanded attention. Those who had the chance to talk with Hackman often remarked that he was the kind of man who, when he spoke, people listened. But about 2 weeks before the tragic event, neighbors noticed an abrupt change. Hackman suddenly stopped his morning drives to get coffee and newspapers. The lights in his mansion stayed on throughout the night, as if someone inside was unable to sleep. Betsy, who was often seen shopping or taking walks, disappeared from public view. No one saw her at the local grocery store, and no one saw her stepping outside. At first, these signs were dismissed as minor changes in routine. But in hindsight, they seemed like warning signals that no one had recognized at the time. One neighbor recalled, "I remember hearing a strange noise from Hackman's mansion late at night. It wasn't shouting or arguing, but something unsettling, like something was wrong inside that house. At the time, I thought maybe he had dropped something or it was just the heating system. But looking back now, I wish I had paid more attention." And then, the inevitable happened. One morning, the mail carrier noticed that newspapers had started piling up outside Hackman's home, untouched. Day after day, more newspapers accumulated, yet no one came to collect them. The neighbors grew curious, but no one truly knew what was happening behind those closed doors. When the police were finally called in to check, what they discovered shook Hollywood to its core. Gene Hackman's death was unlike any story from the films he had starred in. It wasn't a murder, nor was it a mysterious disappearance like the thrilling scripts he had once brought to life on screen. It was a death in solitude, unnoticed, inside his own mansion. 2. The mysterious illness no one expected. The death of Betsy Arakawa was not just a loss for Gene Hackman, it was the turning point in a series of tragic events that would follow. To those who knew her, Betsy was a kind, reserved woman who had always been devoted to her husband. For over 3 decades, she stood by Hackman's side, from his final years in acting to his complete withdrawal from Hollywood. Her sudden passing shocked not only her loved ones but also the neighbors who had grown accustomed to seeing her as the unwavering presence in Hackman's life. This was not just the loss of a wife, it was the collapse of the life that Hackman had meticulously built, one of peace, seclusion, and distance from the chaos of the outside world. But the problem was, Betsy had shown no signs of any serious illness. She was healthy, maintained a disciplined lifestyle, ate well, and exercised regularly. So what exactly happened? Was this truly a natural death, or was there something far more sinister at play? The day Betsy was found dead, Santa Fe was overcast and eerily cold. When police received a call from a concerned neighbor, they had no idea they were about to walk into a case riddled with unsettling questions. When they arrived at Hackman's estate, the door was still locked, and there were no signs of life inside. It took them a while to break in. The first thing they noticed was the haunting silence. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs of distress. The house felt frozen in time, as if life had stopped days earlier. As they moved into the bathroom, what they found left them speechless. Betsy was lying motionless near a space heater, her head resting gently against the bathtub, her face showing no signs of pain or struggle, almost as if she had simply fallen asleep. But the disturbing part was the scattered thyroid medication around her, some pills still intact, others crushed. This raised an urgent question: had she died from a medical condition, or was there another factor involved? There were no signs of forced entry, no indication of a break-in or an attack. Every door was locked from the inside, and nothing in the house appeared disturbed. This ruled out the possibility of an external perpetrator. But if she wasn't murdered, what had actually caused her death? What was even more puzzling was that while neighbors had noticed Betsy's absence for days, Hackman had never called the police or sought medical help. He had not made any attempt to get assistance, even though he was the first person who would have found his wife collapsed. This raised serious concerns, even among investigators. Did Hackman truly understand what was happening? Or was he also suffering from a condition no one knew about? A later forensic report concluded that Betsy's cause of death was hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, HPS, a rare but deadly disease caused by a virus typically carried by rodents. The virus spreads through contact with infected rodent droppings, urine, or saliva. When humans inhale airborne particles contaminated with the virus, they can develop severe respiratory symptoms. HPS has an alarmingly high fatality rate, especially if not diagnosed in time. But there was one major issue: there were no signs of rodents anywhere in Hackman's home. Investigators thoroughly searched the entire mansion and surrounding gardens for any evidence of rodents. They examined every corner, every cabinet, every pipe, anywhere rodents might have left traces. Yet, they found nothing. No nests, no droppings, no gnaw marks. Even the few animal tracks found in the yard were too old to be linked to the case. So how had Betsy contracted the virus? There were two possibilities. The first theory was that she had been infected somewhere outside the home, perhaps she had unknowingly come into contact with the virus before returning home. But if that were the case, why had no one else in the area been infected? If the virus had been present in the environment, there should have been other reported cases. The second, more disturbing theory was that the real cause of death might not have been hantavirus at all, that this was a convenient but flawed conclusion. Had the investigation been rushed? Had something been overlooked? Some medical experts raised doubts about the diagnosis. While HPS is a serious illness, the likelihood of someone contracting it without any evidence of rodents in the environment was suspiciously low. This led to the possibility that the true cause of Betsy's death had been hidden or ignored. But the strangest detail of all was Gene Hackman's silence. Typically, when a person loses a loved one, they react either with grief, distress, or by seeking help. But Hackman did nothing. He never called the police, never informed friends or neighbors. It was as if he had completely detached from the outside world. In the days following Betsy's death, neighbors noticed something eerie: Hackman disappeared. His usual morning drives to get coffee and newspapers stopped. No one saw him in the yard. The lights in his house remained on all night, but no one saw him stepping outside. The mail carrier noticed newspapers piling up at his doorstep, untouched. Neighbors sensed that something was wrong, but out of respect for Hackman's privacy, no one dared to check on him. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. No one entered or left the mansion. There was no communication from Hackman to the outside world. Until the police were finally called in to investigate, no one could have imagined the horrifying truth that awaited inside. 3. Was Gene Hackman left to die? The story took a much darker turn when a witness came forward with testimony strong enough to overturn all previous theories. That witness was Barbara Lenehan, a neighbor who lived directly across from Gene Hackman's mansion. And what she revealed changed everything. Barbara was not the type of person to meddle in others' affairs, but when news of Hackman's death broke, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She recalled that just days before Betsy passed away, she had seen her walking in the garden, even smiling and waving when they happened to cross paths. Betsy looked completely fine. I saw no signs of illness. And then, less than a week later, she was gone. It just doesn't make sense, Barbara told reporters in a later interview. Her words raised a serious question. If Betsy was still healthy before her death, what could have caused her to pass away so suddenly? Was the illness cited as her official cause of death truly credible, or was there another factor that had yet to be uncovered? And more importantly, how did Gene Hackman spend his final days? After Betsy's death, Gene Hackman was completely alone in his vast mansion. It was a grim and unsettling reality that no one had imagined. A man who had spent his life devoted to art, once one of Hollywood's greatest legends, was now left behind, with no help, no one to care for him. Hackman was over 90 years old and had been diagnosed with advanced Alzheimer's. This is a degenerative neurological disease that gradually erodes a person's memory, cognitive abilities, and even their ability to perform basic tasks like eating, daily routines, or using the phone. In its later stages, Alzheimer's patients often live in a disoriented state, unaware of their surroundings or unable to comprehend what is happening to them. This meant that after Betsy's death, it was highly likely that Hackman did not even realize she was gone. He may have wandered through his own home, confused as to why no one was there, why no one was cooking meals, why no one was talking to him. The most terrifying part? No one came to check on Gene Hackman. No relatives, no friends, no medical personnel. Neighbors did not see him leave his house, the lights in his home never turned on at night, and there were no signs of life inside. This eerie stillness raised a chilling question: how could a frail elderly man suffering from Alzheimer's be completely abandoned like this? There was no one to bring Hackman water. No one to prepare his meals. His phone still worked, but he never made a call, or perhaps, he had forgotten how to use it. The days passed in an agonizing silence. A man who had once been a Hollywood icon, who had played powerful and intelligent characters on screen, was now just a frail figure, trapped in his own home, completely unaware that his body was slowly giving out. On February 26, when the police finally entered Gene Hackman's mansion, they had no idea they were about to witness one of the most heartbreaking scenes in Hollywood history. The house was shrouded in darkness, devoid of any signs of life. There was no sound from a television, no footsteps, not a single light illuminating from the windows. Everything was eerily quiet. The front door was still locked, with no signs of forced entry or struggle, but the chilling air inside the home made it clear that they had arrived too late. Walking through the long hallways, they entered a small room near the kitchen, where Gene Hackman's body was found. He wasn't on his bed, nor was he in a chair, he had collapsed directly onto the floor. His eyes were closed, his frail hands resting lifelessly at his sides, his body reduced to nothing but a skeletal frame. Beside him was an old walking cane, perhaps he had tried to move but lost his strength midway. His reading glasses lay a few feet away, as if he had accidentally dropped them in a moment of confusion. Everything in the room painted a painful truth: Hackman had spent his final days entirely alone, with no one to help him, no one to be by his side. What the autopsy revealed left everyone in shock. Hackman's stomach was completely empty, there were no traces of food or water for days. His body was severely dehydrated, to the point where his cells had sustained significant damage. His organs showed clear signs of acute malnutrition, a condition commonly seen in people who have been starved for prolonged periods. What was even more horrifying was that there were no signs that Hackman had even tried to find food. His refrigerator was still stocked with meals, drinking water was available, yet he hadn't consumed anything. This was likely due to the effects of Alzheimer's, which may have caused him to forget how to cook, or even forget that he needed to eat to survive. The official cause of death was determined to be exhaustion and severe malnutrition. This meant that Hackman had died from starvation and dehydration in his own home. Not due to illness, not due to old age, but due to sheer neglect. Immediately, troubling questions arose. How did no one realize that Hackman was in danger? Why was there no medical staff or caregivers sent to check on him after Betsy's death? How could a legendary actor die from starvation and thirst inside his own house? The revelation ignited a wave of public outrage. A man who had once had everything, fame, fortune, and admiration, had ultimately died alone, unnoticed, and uncared for. This tragedy raised a deeper societal issue: how do we treat the elderly, particularly those who were once at the pinnacle of fame? But a far more disturbing question remained: did someone know that Hackman was in danger but chose to stay silent? The first clues of something being amiss inside Hackman's mansion did not come from the police but from a neighbor named Linda Brooks. She was one of the few people who still paid attention to what was happening across the street, and what she remembered only deepened the mystery surrounding Hackman's death. Linda recalled that on the night of February 10th, she had noticed the lights inside Hackman's home flickering strangely. At first, she thought little of it, assuming it was just an electrical issue. But then, something strange happened. Everything suddenly went silent. After that night, she never saw any signs of life inside Hackman's home again. No one came in or out. No sounds. No lights at night, just a prolonged, eerie silence. It made her uneasy, but out of respect for Hackman's privacy, she didn't call the police immediately. But was that a mistake? Did someone witness signs of distress but choose to remain silent? Could someone have known Hackman was in serious danger but not wanted to get involved? Was a terrible truth being deliberately concealed? Things only changed when a mail carrier noticed newspapers piling up outside Hackman's house for days. That was when people finally began to suspect that something was wrong, and police were called to check in. But if Linda Brooks had reported the strange occurrences sooner, could Hackman have been saved? If someone had acted on the unusual signs in his home earlier, would he have been spared from spending his final days in loneliness and starvation? We will never have an answer to that question. But one thing is certain: something happened inside Gene Hackman's mansion between February 10th and February 18th. What took place during that time? Did Hackman try to seek help but receive no response? Or had he already lost all sense of reality, trapped in a state where he no longer understood that he was dying? The truth about Gene Hackman's final days remains shrouded in mystery, and perhaps it will never be fully uncovered. But no matter the answers, one undeniable fact remains: a man like Gene Hackman should not have died this way. A legend should have been remembered and honored, yet he was forgotten, right inside his own home. Barbara Lenehan's chilling statement summed it up best: he deserved a better ending than this. But it seems like someone decided that he shouldn't be remembered at all. But this was just the beginning of the story. The mansion where Hackman spent his final years was not only the scene of his tragic demise, it held dark secrets. Strange evidence, inconsistencies in the official theories, and lingering questions about Betsy Arakawa's true cause of death. Could a hidden truth have been deliberately buried? Could Gene Hackman and his wife have been victims of a larger conspiracy? The answers may lie within Gene Hackman's mansion, a place hiding horrifying secrets that no one dares to talk about. 4. The Haunted Mansion, a discovery that left investigators stunned. The moment police stepped into Gene Hackman's mansion, they were struck by the suffocating atmosphere that loomed over every corner. The massive house was overwhelmingly silent, as if time itself had stopped days ago. A damp, musty odor lingered in the air, and faint light filtered through tightly drawn curtains, casting a ghostly shadow over the walls. This was no longer the home of a man; it felt like an abandoned structure, forgotten by all. Investigators combed through every room, hallway, and hidden space in search of clues that could explain what had happened in Hackman's final days. And then, a chilling discovery was made: one of Hackman's 3 dogs was found dead under mysterious circumstances. These dogs had been Hackman's most loyal companions. He was often seen walking them around the estate in the early mornings. But now, one of them lay motionless on the floor, while the other 2 remained alive. There were no signs of an attack, no visible wounds, and no immediate indication of what had caused its death. Why did only one die while the others survived? The police searched for traces of poison but found none. They examined the dog food, but nothing appeared unusual. This raised a crucial question: did the dog die of natural causes, or was it linked to something far more sinister? Seasoned investigators knew that animals often react to unseen dangers. Had this dog witnessed something so terrifying that it couldn't survive? Or was its death connected to an event that had taken place before Hackman himself passed away? But this was not the only unsettling discovery inside the mansion. Another puzzling detail shocked investigators: why had Hackman died in a small, cramped room near the kitchen instead of in his bed or the living room? Typically, elderly individuals who feel unwell instinctively seek comfort on a bed or couch. Yet, Hackman had been found in a near-empty space, as if he had been forced or led there against his will. Did he attempt to leave but collapse before he could? Or had someone deliberately placed him in that room, leaving him to deteriorate? Adding to the mystery, the house phone was still fully operational, yet Hackman never called for help. This could be attributed to late-stage Alzheimer's, which severely affects cognitive abilities. But an alternate theory emerged: had someone prevented him from making that call? If Hackman had been alone, he may have simply forgotten how to use the phone. But what if he hadn't been alone? What if someone had made sure he couldn't seek help? Another terrifying possibility surfaced: what if Hackman had seen or experienced something so horrifying that it left him completely paralyzed with fear? Alzheimer's can impair reasoning, but it doesn't strip away a person's survival instincts. If he had felt himself dying, he would have sought a more comfortable place, unless he had been too terrified, too disoriented, or had been forcibly confined. But who could have done that? The police checked for any signs of forced entry, but every door and window remained securely locked. This meant one of 2 things: either Hackman had willingly let someone in, or someone had access to the house via a key. This led to a chilling suspicion: did Hackman truly die of starvation, or had an outside force intervened? The initial theory that Hackman had simply been an elderly man left to waste away in isolation no longer seemed convincing. The strange inconsistencies within the mansion suggested a much darker truth was being concealed. Hackman's death was not just a tragic case of neglect, it was a shadowy enigma with layers still untold. Then, an even more unsettling revelation emerged: some investigators who entered the mansion reported feeling an eerie presence. Several officers described a heavy, unexplainable tension in the air, while others claimed to have had the distinct sensation of being watched from the shadows. One investigator even said that as they were leaving, a chill ran down their spine, as if someone, or something, had passed right behind them. Had the mansion been the site of something far more terrifying than just a tragic death? From the mysterious demise of Betsy Arakawa, to Hackman's unexplained decline, to the bizarre death of one of his dogs, everything pointed to something beyond ordinary explanations. The police officially closed the case, ruling that Hackman had died from exhaustion and malnutrition. But with so many unanswered questions, could the truth be far more sinister? Perhaps someone had entered the house. Perhaps a secret had been buried within those walls. Perhaps someone did not want Gene Hackman to live long enough to reveal what he had seen. The answers remained elusive. And perhaps they would stay locked away forever within Gene Hackman's haunted mansion. 5. Rumors, theories, and unanswered questions. The deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, seem to have been concluded with a simple explanation: Betsy succumbed to hantavirus, while Hackman died from malnutrition and exhaustion. However, the unusual details surrounding both cases made it impossible for the public to accept these deaths as mere coincidences. Questions remained, mysteries were left unsolved, and numerous theories continued to emerge. Was this truly just a tragedy of old age and illness, or was there a much darker truth hidden beneath the surface? One of the first theories suggested was the possibility that the Hackman couple had suffered from carbon monoxide, CO, poisoning, an odorless, colorless gas that is extremely lethal if leaked from a home's heating system. Inhaling high levels of CO can lead to unconsciousness, loss of awareness, and ultimately, death without the victim even realizing what is happening. This could explain why Betsy collapsed in the bathroom without any signs of struggle or resistance. If CO had built up in the house, it could have severely affected both of them before Betsy's death, and Hackman, already weakened due to age and Alzheimer's, might not have been able to react or seek help. However, this theory was quickly dismissed when authorities inspected the heating system and found no signs of a CO leak. Moreover, if there truly had been a gas leak, Hackman would have been affected immediately as well, not surviving for days after Betsy's death. But is this explanation truly reliable? CO tests may have been conducted too late, after the gas had completely dissipated, or the ventilation system in the mansion could have erased crucial evidence. If it wasn't CO, then what caused Betsy's sudden demise? Could another type of toxin have been involved? The forensic report concluded that Betsy died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, HPS, a rare disease transmitted by rodents. This immediately raised a serious question: where did Betsy contract the virus? Investigators thoroughly searched the entire mansion but found no evidence of rodents or any animals capable of carrying the virus. No droppings, no nests, no signs of rodent infestation. This led to two possibilities: either Betsy had been exposed to the virus somewhere else before returning home, or her cause of death had been misidentified, or even deliberately concealed. Another suspicious detail was that if hantavirus had truly been present in the home, Hackman should have been infected as well. He was an elderly man with a weakened immune system. If the virus was truly airborne, he would have almost certainly contracted the disease. Yet, Hackman lived for several days after his wife's death without displaying any hantavirus-related symptoms. This raised another pressing question: was Betsy's death too quickly blamed on the virus? And if the virus was not the real cause, then what actually happened to her? Did someone intervene in her death without leaving any evidence? If Betsy's death was full of uncertainties, Hackman's passing was even more suspicious. His autopsy report indicated that he died from extreme exhaustion and malnutrition, with his stomach completely empty. But the most disturbing part was that for nearly 2 weeks after Betsy's death, no one cared for him. How was that possible? Hackman, despite withdrawing from Hollywood, still had family, friends, and acquaintances. Yet no one called him, checked on him, or offered assistance. This raised a serious concern: did Hackman truly starve to death, or did someone deliberately choose not to intervene? If Hackman was simply forgotten, then society had failed to protect a man who was once admired by millions. But if someone knew he was in danger and did nothing, then this wasn't just neglect, it was an intentional act of abandonment. There were two possible explanations. First, Gene Hackman was truly forgotten in a tragic accident. The loss of Betsy may have left him without his only support system, and those who knew him may not have realized the urgency of his situation. But the second, far more chilling possibility, was that someone was fully aware of his condition but chose to do nothing. If someone wanted Hackman dead, they didn't have to lay a hand on him, they simply had to let him wither away, unnoticed, without intervention. Hackman's final days were a bizarre sequence of events that no one could explain. He didn't leave the house. No one entered. His phone was working, but no calls were made. A person with Alzheimer's might forget how to use a phone, but survival instincts remain intact. If he felt himself starving, he would have searched for food or help. But he didn't. What really happened inside Gene Hackman's mansion? Did someone enter but leave no trace? Did someone witness his decline and do nothing? Was there a hidden force orchestrating his death to make it appear as mere neglect, when in reality, it was a carefully planned event? Regardless of the theories, one fact remained undeniable: Gene Hackman's death was not just an unfortunate accident. It was either the result of unforgivable negligence, or worse, a meticulously executed plan. And no matter how much time passes, the truth is still hidden somewhere within the silent walls of the mansion where Gene Hackman lived and died in solitude. Gene Hackman's death was not just a personal tragedy but a haunting story of abandonment and oblivion. A man who once stood at the pinnacle of Hollywood, a legendary actor whose performances became immortalized in film history, yet in the end, he passed away in solitude, no one by his side, no one realizing he was slowly fading away. This story has not only shocked the public but also raised a profound question: is fame and legacy strong enough to save a person from being forgotten? As news of Hackman's death spread, Hollywood and fans around the world expressed their sorrow. His films were once again celebrated, his outstanding performances reminisced, and many could not believe that such a legend had met such a tragic end. But despite the tributes, the praises, and the outpouring of respect, one bitter truth remains: Gene Hackman died alone, unnoticed, and uncared for, until it was far too late.